experience through extraordinary communication. And we are recording this webinar for some of the attendees that weren't able to make it last minute. So just want to let everybody know that. If you can keep yourself on mute throughout the conversation, I will give you time to ask questions at the end, and you are able to post questions in the Q&A section at any time throughout the presentation. But I do anticipate us having time at the end for questions and answers as well, and you can unmute yourself at that time. Let's go ahead and meet our panelists. So joining me today, I have Michelle Hare. She brings over 20 years of financial aid experience, holding an MED in higher education and a certified financial aid administrator designation. Michelle spent most of her career at four-year public universities, but did get her start at the University of Phoenix when they were just beginning their online education. Michelle is currently the director of Winthrop University's Director of Financial Aid in South Carolina, with approximately 5,000 undergraduate and graduate students. So thank you for joining us, Michelle. And then we have Jim Dunn. He has over 28 years experience as an enrollment staffing consultant, operations consultant, vice president of enrollment, vice president of student services, and director of admissions. In addition to having worked with dozens of nonprofit colleges and universities over the years as a consultant, Mr. Dunn is also the CEO of Higher Ed Support, which focuses on admission, staffing, and enrollment analytics. Thank you, Jim, for joining. Then we also have Joanne Pluff. She is the dedicated Associate Vice President of Student Experience at Howard University, a role specifically crafted to elevate the focus on student engagement and satisfaction within the institution. With over 7 years of executive level experience in fostering student engagement, delivering exceptional customer service, and cultivating meaningful relationships, Joanne brings a wealth of expertise to Howard University's offices of enrollment services and student experience. Unfortunately, Nadia Willard was supposed to be joining us as well today, but had an emergency and is unable to attend. She has over 20 years of call center experience and has worked with FA Solutions for almost 10 years, serving as our director of our Student Experience Center with FA Solutions. She loves to find innovative ways to provide quality service to our students and is very apologetic for not being able to make the panel today. And then I'm Bridget McGuire. I am the COO for FA Solutions, and I will be the MC host for today's event. I have been in financial aid for over 20 years and really enjoy finding a way to make a complicated process easier to understand and complete. I've been with FA Solutions for over 6 years and love the variety that our clients and our product offering give me in this whole financial aid industry, especially this time of year. Very fun and interesting. But I want to thank everybody for joining us today. We do hope to have an open dialogue about the student's experience and the best ways to communicate. Hopefully we'll find some insight and ideas on what might help your institution in the future. So let's kind of dive in. I'm going to start by giving each of the panelists a chance to kind of describe their current arrangement at their institution or in their role and how they structure that communication with students. So I'm going to start kind of in the same order we did the introductions. So Michelle, do you want to share a little bit at your school, how you're kind of structured and what your communication strategy and style kind of looks like?
Sure. Thank you, Bridget. Good afternoon, everyone. So for us, because we are a smaller school, we don't have some of the resources that some of the bigger, fancier schools have. So our main communication is email, using the online portal that is always available for self-service, and then phones. While we do have the ability to text, it has to be a very targeted texting campaign where we reach out to a specific set of students. Our system does send emails. So if a FAFSA comes in and we need to send that we need their tax returns or something, it will automatically do that with a lot of complicated things set up. And then we have a dedicated email that our students can write into and that our counselors share. And then we have phones. The phones were our biggest problem until we partnered with FA Solutions. So we would have always said that email was our students' preferred method. It turns out it appears to be phones are their preferred method, and they just resorted to emails because we weren't able to handle the call volume. So for us, FA Solutions provides the front line for phones. They do what we call our tier 1 and a lot of tier 2 questions, and then they'll involve us if it needs to go higher than that. Our counselors handle all of the incoming emails and any tier 2 calls that go pretty complicated. And we have 4 counselors that handle the majority of the volume. We have a front desk that kind of triages our emails, and then others can step in as needed. That's the basics, but mostly email and phone calls.
That's helpful. That's actually very interesting that it was a lot of email driven, and then once the phones were being handled, students found that to be a faster turnaround than perhaps the emails that they were doing initially. That's an interesting insight.
We're assuming they appreciate the instant gratification the phone call gives them versus having to wait for some of the email returns. So
that could be possible. Jim, what would you say is kind of your strategy as you've done your different roles throughout your experience? What's been the most, I guess, either what you're doing now or what you've seen most useful? Because I know you're a little bit different, not being out of school directly.
Yeah, I mean, I work with multiple universities of all sizes, and they're all a little different, really, depending on, I almost exclusively work with the admissions side, but depending on the size of the school, depending on the programs, for example, graduate students respond better to certain communication, more than undergraduate students, where they are in the admissions funnel, whether it's a lead coming in. So at the extreme top of the funnel, when we're doing lead outreach, just trying to reach the students who are requesting information, one-off text is by far the best, especially for undergraduate students. That when you're doing mass texting, a lot of schools are only set up so that they could do mass texting, or it's just multiples. We do one-off, and so we pair everything with an outbound phone call and a text message. And our contact rate when we do both in a pairing, by the time they get to the third attempt to contact, we're contacting well over 70–75% of the inquiries that are coming in. At the application level, once the student has applied, texting still king to a point as far as contact rate, especially if they only have very simple questions. But they are definitely still using email, and they're definitely still using the phone. But as far as just from a straight making contact, whether it's positive, negative, or neutral, one-off texting is by far, it beats anything else that we're doing. Open rates on emails are pretty fixed. It's easy to predict that. Pickup rates on phone calls are pretty easy to predict depending on where they are in the funnel. But one-off texting has been king now for about 2 or 3 years. It overtook, from what we do, overtook outbound phone calls as far as contact rate about 2 or 3 years ago, and has never let go.
That's really interesting, because when I think about texting, I do feel like it's, like a marketing bulk text that I receive when I think from some of the websites, right, that have you sign up for texting. And I wouldn't have thought that students would prefer as well that one-off, because I think texting more as just a notification reminding them of a deadline or reminding them to do something. But it is that if you put that personal touch into your communication, it really seems to drive that success, especially if you're seeing that with your one-off communication text. That's a good point. And just a reminder, right, when we're talking about communication, that personal, right, means something rather than just bulk. Joanne, how would you describe the structure at your institution as far as the communication strategies and methods used?
Yeah, of course. So we have a high volume of calls, and generally it is based off of our application cycle. So this year, Howard took in 36,000 applications. So for us, we are trying to foster a communication style that the students are used to reading emails. Howard is very segmented. There are 14 different schools and colleges that come along with their own financial aid department, admissions department, bursar, records. So we have all very much committed to sending out like larger emails to our students at the beginning of the year. And then we'll utilize the different systems to remind them with text messages. Of course, you know, some of the bigger messages like I have a hold, you know, or you are getting a hold. This is what this means. We try to limit that because they're getting so much information from other different departments on campus that we don't want our messages to get muddled. We similarly do our text messaging strictly for reminders. We typically don't send out anything that has a big call to action other than, you know, review your FAFSA, submit this, or please do this. They're pretty short and sweet because the students, and they'll tell us, if you ask your average student, you look on their cell phone, there's probably, I don't know, 50 to 60 notifications for messages that they haven't read. We also try to place a lot of banners within some of the university systems. So we have Workday on campus, we have Canvas. So anytime we can manipulate those banners to push them to do what we need to, we use those channels as well. As far as emailing, each individual department does have their own email. So there's a university registrar, there's a registrar for our School of Divinity, for the School of Business. So the students know that if they need a more general, broad question, they can go to the university registrar, for example, or they can go to their school registrar. And then internally, we utilize our call center to pick up the volume of calls, which is, you know, I don't know, anywhere from a good week is 1,600 calls, a bad week could be 2,500 calls. So it generally just depends on the time of year for us.
Can you describe a little bit more? You mentioned a banner that pushes announcements to students. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, so within Canvas and what we call it Bison Hub, but it is Workday. So within both of those systems, you can put like a little message banner that says, you know, graduation is in 10 days, or do your faculty survey. I don't know, it could be anything. It could be a happy thing.
Another way.
Yeah, yep. So we utilize that a lot to alert the students. So as soon as they log in, it flashes and they have to read the message before going into other parts of the systems.
Okay, I think it's just an interesting to use the tools that you already have that have another way of presenting information to students, you know, without going outside of, you already have that. Use that tool and you can share announcements that way too. So I thought that was a unique and a little bit different. So thank you.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, integrating and utilizing the new student information system, we've all become really consistent with our messaging. So we also use the televisions in all these different offices as well. So each week we get a new set of, you know, slides that can play in the Welcome Center, for example, that's outside of the registrar's office. So we try to push those messages too.
Well, kind of related to that, right? If you know, you guys in each of your kind of descriptions talked a little bit about the volume that you see. So we kind of led into that. And again, I just had some questions prepared to help us through the discussion. Michelle, you had mentioned, you know, that initially it seemed to be a lot of emails and now it's phone calls. You just mentioned, Joanne, about having like the TV monitors in the building. Do you still find with having ground campus, do students still come in and want that personal touch, or have you found more students are driven now to the electronic means, either phone or texting or email?
So I think for us, our students are very high touch. So if they can see someone, they would prefer it. If they can't see someone, they would like to talk with them in person, or on the phone rather. And if that doesn't work, then they will go after email. You know, it's not out of the ordinary for a student to be sitting on the phone with one of the calling agents while waiting in line to speak with someone in financial aid. They do all of the things.
They're like, they're emailing on hold and
yes, literally, they will do every single thing. And I think that it's partly us, right? Like we recognize that some of our messaging obviously isn't clear if a lot of them are calling and showing up. So we are working on that. So I'll own that. But I also think our students just really like to be sure. Like they want 100% certainty, like Miss Joanne said, you know, and I take her word for it. They're not more apt to go to the website and do research. They really, really, really are like of the highest touch of a school that I've worked at.
Michelle, would you say, do you find a similar situation? If they can come in person, they will, or do you find something different at your institution?
If they can reach someone by phone, I think they won't come in, but if they can't, then absolutely. And we've definitely had the people that like, well, I emailed, but I figured I'd just stop by. I mean, for us though, I mean, we have a lot of traditional students, right? 18 to 21. So if they're on campus, they might come by, but they're also as likely to call. And it depends on the time of year. We don't have many in-person classes during the summer, so they're less likely to stop by the office during the summer months, but in the fall they might. We are not back to pre-COVID levels of walk-in though, but I do feel that's in part in help because we now have someone that can answer all of the calls instead of the handful that we could do and do emails and everything. But they do. Nothing is going to turn away the student that wants to come in person. So you have to be able to manage all of it. You got to be available to offer the people coming in, the phones, the emails, and kind of meet them where they can as best you can. And that gets hard depending on how many staffing you have and what you're available for.
Yeah, and I think, Jim, you had mentioned in your description that you found that there was a difference between grad and undergrad. And can you describe a little bit what you've kind of noticed that and what that difference means to how you kind of come about a communication strategy?
Yeah, we know that undergraduate students are going to need their hands held a lot more. And so depending on where they are in the admissions funnel, for example, when I talk about one-off texting, it's because the text message is coming specifically from one of my admissions folks who are reaching out to collect a particular document. And so on the graduate level, when we're trying to process, for example, my team will collect all the documents for the school so that the school has a decision-ready package, trying to get letters of recommendation and things like that. When the student's working directly with one of my admissions assistants and we're texting them saying, we still need this, it's immediate communication. And so graduate students, when they're trying to get admitted, it's right away. I mean, the contact is phenomenal and it beats email all day long when you're at that stage in the funnel. On the undergrad side, it's just a ton of questions. And so depending on how many questions they have, if they're transfer students getting transfer credits evaluated, they have a lot of different things that go into it. So for undergraduate students, lots of phone work. It's easier to move an undergrad student through the process when you can get them on the phone. That's by far because they have so many questions. They're so concerned about transfer credits. Most of the students that we work with on the undergraduate side are transfer students, and that's their number one priority. So being able to talk to them, and even the beautiful thing about the texting is we use texting to set the appointment so that we can have the phone call in detail. But at the graduate level, on the admission side, I'm just saying they just do not care about talking on the phone with most of my team. They're just like, tell me what I need to get admitted. And so that it works very well. But you do have to know who you're talking to decide which way to go.
Sure. And do you guys do any of you do anything different, like when it is peak or when it is summer or in the slower periods? Like, do you have a different style or different tools that you use given the time of year or the volume that you anticipate?
So at Howard, we will pull all of the on-campus enrollment management team, all of the advisors. I'm trying to think, anybody that could interact with a student that they may be having a disruption in their own enrollment, and we'll put them in one place. So the students know that I would say the month of August and the month of January, they can find everybody they need in one central location. All of us are spread all over our campus. I think it takes me like, I don't know, 20 minutes to walk down the street to the IT. So just kind of cutting out that time and making sure that if a student is going to appear on campus, I want to ensure that they have someone to talk to when they arrive in whatever office that might be. Because oftentimes, you know, the student might think, I need someone from the registrar, and it actually might be you need somebody from admissions or, you know, financial aid and bursar, sometimes interchangeable. So we try to make sure that we can mitigate the running around with a campus that is, I would say, significantly suburban. So we'll put them in that space, and we use a system where the students can sign in to hop in line, and we can tell them how far they are in line. It'll text them and say, hey, you know, here's you're ready at table whatever. And then if there is some type of follow-up that's necessary, the agent staff can go in and text that person once the task is completed. So we know we can track the volume, we can see how long they took, we can see how many staff people the student went to, we can see if there's a need for more bursar staff or what have you.
Yep, that makes sense. Michelle, anything different that you do during the peaks or valleys?
Yeah, well, it's gotten easier since we've been getting assistance with our phones. We used to have to finagle a lot more. So not having to figure out if we're going to put all our resources to walk-ins versus calls, that sort of thing. Really, the only difference is the first couple of weeks in August, when orientation and disbursement start classes are happening, we'll bring everyone off of processing just to handle the walk-in volume, so no one has to wait too long. We'll do it again in January. And then we'll have someone else, maybe like an assistant director or something, helping with the emails, because counselors can only answer so many emails and see so many students in a day. So we prioritize the walk-in students during those periods, but not to the length that Howard University would have to do in any way, shape, or form. But really getting our phone calls being answered took a lot of the burden off. We used to have to finagle a lot. We do also offer virtual counseling a couple times a week for those who prefer you know, like a Zoom. We do take those offline again the first couple of weeks of classes, just so that we can focus on those that are in front of us as well. But
I know if Nadia was here today, one of the things she would say that we do for our Student Experience Center for the peaks is we do have limited vacation that we tell people when they're hired, and we promote, you know, talk about it at the start of the year, and then as a reminder. So we try to limit that vacation time during those peak periods, so we have as much staff here as possible. And we also do an internal, we call it Positively Peak raffle. And so during peak, there's ways that employees can earn tickets into the raffle. And we draw names a couple times a week with everybody that's entered tickets into the raffle. And so they can get gift cards and other prizes and treats based on you know, what's being offered that particular week. And they can earn that for perfect call monitoring scores, or somebody giving them a kudos, or you know, perfect attendance. I know that seems crazy because you want perfect attendance, but when you're answering a lot of phone calls, which our team does, they tend to sometimes need those little breathers or breaks or things like that. So just promoting that positive attendance and the good behavior and the quality customer service with a raffle where they can win prizes really gets them kind of engaged and excited for, you know, for that opportunity. And then they all cheer when their coworkers, you know, get selected in the raffle. So we do that twice a year to kind of, you know, keep people focused and make a positive out of what is a very busy period of time. So I think that's one of the things that we do. And then we also just proactively try to look to ensure that the staffing is adequate, because we know the call volume is going to be higher during that window of time, and just make sure that we're posed appropriately. So I know it's something that she's very proud of that we do as an organization. So I wanted to share it in light of her not being able to join us today.
I'll jump on that.
Sure.
I didn't even think about that, but we do exactly that. We don't allow out of office for those 2 weeks in August and the 2 weeks in January, except, you know, we did have one person whose son decided to get married that week. We decided she should be allowed to go to the wedding, you know, things like that. We do that. And then we do try to do some feeding, you know, some breakfast or some lunch for the crazy week of August, just to keep people motivated. So that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about that, but we do try to limit the no out of office unless it's something outside of your control. Again, just so we have enough bodies.
And Bridget, I would love to say something on this for peak season, because the number one request I get and I work with state universities down to small private, so it's across the board. During peak seasons, especially in the summer, evenings, because all of my staff are part-timers. I hire a lot of, everybody's a part-timer, but evenings and weekend availability during peak season is vital, especially in the admissions side, because by now a lot of schools had probably accepted their application their application loads for the fall. Now it's a question of getting those apps admitted. And so all summer long, it's about having part-timers call and text in the evenings and on weekends to collect everything. And the contact rate is phenomenal when you're trying to call in evenings and the weekends in the summertime. During the day, a lot of these people are out, they're working. It's just, to me, during peak season, it's a must. And so I tell everybody when I hire part-timers, you're going to be working evenings and weekends. And if you get a West Coast school, it's going to be a late night.
That's actually really interesting. And I know, coming from a traditional, financial aid world where you're in the office, kind of like Joanne and Michelle, you don't have that staff, right, to work. They're already kind of feeling the pressure and the burnout. And so having to actually then work a night and a weekend is just that added. But to your point, you were using part-time, right? Or if you, look at a different resource, not that, this is solicitation, just saying, if you have another resource, right, that can maybe fill those gaps or that void to reach them during the time that they're really available, could be very helpful. So it's
Yeah, it is, because it just speeds up the process. And during the peak season, during the summer, for most traditional schools, it's not about really getting more applications. It's about getting the applications you have admitted and getting them through the rest of the funnel. So,
Yep, that makes sense. I know, again, we've kind of just flowed some of this through there, but curious, I put on here kind of what have you tried? What do you think works best? What didn't work? Is there like a key that you think would be worth sharing? And I guess, I'll go to you first, Jim, just to mix it up. Is there like something you've seen that is like I never had luck with this? Or you just mentioned nights and weekends, right? That's been a key to your success, is having folks work nights and weekends. Any other kind of best practice you would want to share, or I would try to avoid this, that maybe would give people some things to think about as they're thinking about their communication models?
yeah, reliance on mass texting. Mass texting, when you're blasting out to 5,000 people, nobody's going to read it. They're going to be able to, they'll see it in the text message. And by nobody, please, I don't want to sound too down on it, because it does have its benefits. But when you're wanting a call to action, because most text messages, when you send them out, you're not actually wanting them to do anything that second. You're wanting them to think about something, or you're wanting them to plan something, or you're wanting them to remember something. And so it works for that purpose. But if you need someone on the phone or to call you right away, direct one-off texting does work. But the content, the way you write the texting is very, very important. And that's the number one thing I would tell people when they're trying to communicate with students via text. Make sure that you're writing the text correctly, because if it looks like a sales text, they will not open it. And so there are ways to do that to where you can increase it. But the reliance, a lot of schools went out and they spent a lot of money doing mass texting, and it is what it is. But so I would definitely be a little leery of that one. But as far as the best practice, get some part-timers on your team, even if they're students. And if you're doing, and remember, I'm just talking about the admissions side. And so if you're doing it, if you're anybody on this call is from the admissions side, it's worth it. Part-timers and people who can work evenings and weekends make all the difference in the summer. Really does.
Okay. Joanne, any tips or tricks or things that you would give a definite do or a definite don't do? Or
I think for us, when I arrived, something that was glaringly obvious is the team that we were using to answer our external or incoming calls. They weren't super familiar with higher education. And we really struggled because it's hard to have that value and understanding if you haven't, not that there's anything wrong with not going to college, but how do you understand the importance of a FAFSA and why it's important for you to submit it if you've never submitted it? And this isn't a dig at anybody who hasn't gone to university or even taken classes, but the reality was we were putting all of our communication on people that didn't really care or understand why it was so important to help the student and the family understand what a FAFSA means and loans and financial aid and payment plans. So for us, we now know that we are not a team that can handle transactional calling groups. Like our experts need to be people from the field who understand, okay, so you've submitted your application, now what's next? And here's what you can recognize. Like it's easy enough to send anybody a script and you can really regurgitate that back, right? Like anybody can read, but it takes more knowledge to truly understand what it is the student is looking for. And I think once we figured and found the right group, it quelled a lot of anxiety around the enrollment cycle as a whole. So if you can imagine, we have 13,000 students on our campus, but then we have 36,000 families calling and emailing and texting and trying to understand. So when we don't have the right infrastructure and the right people on the phones, we were dead in the water. So we now realize that our students, like I said, they're very high touch and it couldn't be a transactional conversation. It had to be someone who truly understood the cycle, the funnel from beginning to end, because many of our students, they get somebody's phone number and they'll call them again. They'll call and say, I want to speak to Miss Bridget because, she really helped me and now I'm a grad student and that's the only person I want to talk to, which is fine and welcomed. And it obviously makes us feel good that they've connected with someone. So truly having the right people picking up that phone was very, very important.
they find their favorites, that's for certain.
We do. Absolutely do.
Michelle, any additional thoughts from you on best practices or not to do's or?
Right. Well, and some of it is out of our control, right? When you're short staffed, at one point we were 3 staff down, there's only so much you can do, right? And the more on top of things you can be, the less people are going to need to contact you, right? If your verifications get behind or your plus or private processing gets behind, that can increase the number of contacts you have to have. So the faster you can do that helps as well. I will say something for us that has been helpful is run your communications by students, especially if you keep getting a lot of questions about something. We used to have one about our scholarship renewal criteria, and it would panic our best and our brightest, thinking they weren't going to renew their scholarship. And it was really meant for the people that needed to go to summer and earn some more hours. So we did like a test, like the 10 people that came into the office, we had them read our thing. They offer some suggestions, and now people understand our emails. So anything or text or whatever, if you can, try to do it. Even if you have some, Gen Z in your office, they all see it differently, hear it differently. So even though you think it's good and clear, run it by some of the people that are actually getting it, and that really helps.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
And what a great suggestion, because it's true. Everybody reads it through their own lens, and being that all of us on this, panel right now have worked in this industry for a while. And so we kind of have an understanding of what we're trying to say and what action to take. And so that's a super interesting idea, just to get someone that doesn't live in this world every day, read it and see if they understood the intent of it.
And Bridget, to comment on that real quick, the majority of my employees are graduate students. Now they're from all colleges all over the country, but they'll be, so I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, so I have a lot of Penn State people that end up coming with me. But I will just tell you, graduate students, part-time, make fantastic employees because they've been through the process, they understand it. So yeah, whenever you're looking for part-timers, most graduate students are more than willing to make some extra money while they're finishing up. So
It's a good call. And I know, even to the point you guys were saying about, when I think about financial aid, right, the students just want the money paid. So as long as the process is running smoothly, usually mitigates some of the phone calls, at least in financial aid specifically. But you have to juggle that balancing act of ensuring, that you're awarding and you're, answering the phones and whatnot. I know that's one of the reasons why FA Solutions started our Student Experience Center, was to help take that burden of the phone calls so that schools really can, focus on their packaging and their processing and their awarding and seeing those students in person that you guys are all talking about. And then have the calls, maybe go somewhere else so that you can focus on what's happening right there in front of you. And we do look for individuals on our team that do understand, and when we hire them, they either have that financial aid experience, or if we're training them on it, we make sure that we're always sharing the what's next, to ensure that you're not just answering the question of this is going to make me sound old, what's the fax number, but you're asking what are you going to fax and why, so that you can really answer those questions. I guess now they're not really asking for fax numbers anymore, but that example always stays in my head. So I think some good points in there that you guys have shared to really help us kind of think about how we're communicating, what we're saying when we're communicating, which format makes the most sense based on which type of student or where you are in the semester, or the term or the quarter, to make sure that you really are utilizing all of your resources. And I think it's interesting also to hear kind of the differences between the different types of roles and the different types of size schools that you all are, but yet still similarly, having to work through the same timeframes and the same peaks, and obviously very similar questions as well that you're getting from the students. And one of the things that I think keeps popping up in communication is talking about how is artificial intelligence changing the game. I feel like it's everywhere now, and it's being mentioned a lot in communications as to, is this an answer for the future? Does it solve any problems? I'm curious if any of you are using AI in any way right now, for any of your communication processes.
So we have a chat bot, but I would say that I know that there are better products for our university. My goal would be to have a bot that can connect directly to the SIS to truly pull student information. I don't know if that's been created, but that's what I would like. On the admissions processing side, we utilize Slate. And Slate said that they are rolling out an AI that schools can program to do their GPA calculation. So I would welcome that, so that we don't have people power behind those 36,000 applications that have to be reviewed. So those are two things that we are hoping for in the future. The chatbot now, students will ask very complex questions, and most of it comes back to us via email, because the bot will say, we're going to refer you to the office. So for us right now, I think it causes more stress than necessary, but we're hoping to integrate those two things in the coming years.
Okay, good to know. Michelle, Jim, you guys using AI in any form?
Well, for us, I'm very slow to the game. I feel like my mother right now, like, oh, what's this AI thing? But initially what we're using it for is to help us make our emails or communications a little nicer, a little shorter. It can take your idea and just make it sound better. And it really helps with those difficult situations to just make it sound a little more nice, even if you have to deliver bad news. So that's been, I feel like, life-changing, just in the sense it can help you get to a better answer. We also have a chat bot. I've liked it. Like, we just did one for FAFSA that says, we've noticed you haven't filled out your 24-25 FAFSA. Why? Press 1 if you plan to do it soon, press 2 if you need us to call you. So that's been helpful. We also use Slate, so I assume our admissions office will be jumping on any and all AI that we'll bring. And I'm a fan of anything that will take out some of the manual work that would leave us more time to help counsel students and be more proactive, right? Sometimes the things that fall away are being able to be proactively reaching out, talking, counseling, that sort of thing, when you have to just process. So anything that it can bring to our lives to make that part easier, so we'll have more time for like the touchy-feely stuff, I'm all for. I just don't know what's coming, and I guess I'll need someone who can handle it and speak that language. So
Gotcha. Jim, any additional
And
thoughts?
yeah, I mean, the two areas that I have two state universities that have experimented with it in two different ways. And so we're testing it in both. But in one way, it's really working well when it comes to program differentiation, where, for example, if you have two master's degrees in engineering with that split off into different areas, or whenever there's confusion as to which program, AI is working very well at helping to explain the differences between programs. And that's something that the AI can do. Almost a good admissions rep can do it very well, but on demand, AI does work very well for that. And it allows the students to really narrow down what the program is that they really want to do. The other one that we're getting more and more questions with, I have community colleges all the way to state universities, the same questions. Talk to me about career outcomes, talk to me about the employment outlook with this degree. Those things, those questions have increased. I don't want to throw out the 200% piece, but yeah, we've seen it at a couple different schools where the questions for that have just every single cycle, it's becoming more and more dominant. And so it definitely, the one state university is really doing well with that, is just trying to explain it. And I have community colleges that are using that as well. So those are two big areas: program separation and career outcomes in my area is the type of thing. So it is working, but to Joanna's point, a lot of the questions that people are asking are very specific, and the AI hasn't really caught up with it yet.
Well, that's one of the things that we're finding. I know Nadia wasn't able to join today, but she's been working on the FA Solutions side with our IT team and with our owners to hopefully we're going to be doing a beta or a pilot program in the next couple of months with some different ideas on how to utilize AI and see, how can it be utilized. But what we're finding is kind of what you're all saying, right? Is that you still need that human involved in it, or join your suggestion, like connect it to the student information system so it can actually find specific information. And we're finding the more we look into it, that we do think AI with a human will provide student support that will help improve response time and internal and external kind of conversations, but it is a two-way process, right? So we're actually looking at how can we use it to help with texting. So not quite a bot, but with texting. And we're right now kind of, what are the top 25, 30 things that students call financial aid about? And can we help create a more human approach to that AI connection? So it's something that we're working on as an organization as well. I haven't been as close to it. And I apologize again that Nadia had an emergency unexpectedly and was unable to join us, because she might have been able to share a little bit more. But it's definitely something that we're looking at. And even to what you were saying earlier about evenings and weekends, right? Even if it could handle half of like some inquiries during those hours or something, it might be able to at least monitor kind of what's coming in, provide some answers and responses. So we're looking into it. Anybody that's interested in hearing how it goes or wants more information, you're welcome to reach out. But it is still I think for everybody, right, a work in progress. We just keep hearing that AI is out there and it's going to take over the world. And I think there'll still always be a bit of human involved in it, but it could just be another resource, right, to free up so that folks can maybe pay more attention to other pieces of the business. So we're definitely digging into it and seeing what opportunity exists there. I did want to see if anybody had any questions for the panelists, either based on things that they asked or just your curiosity in general. Maybe one of the reasons you came to the call is you were hoping to hear something specific. I did have one question come in so far. How do you handle Spanish speaking parents? Do you add this skill as a job description or as a preference? Do any of you deal with Spanish or any other language for that matter in your communications?
So we do. There is somebody on staff in almost every office that I've worked at. We've had someone on staff, and I think I replied back to this person saying,
Oh, okay.
At minimum, you should have a good relationship with, like, we have a Spanish as a major here. So they know if one of us is calling, we're throwing a Hail Mary. But I will tell you, using AI, I was able to speak with a parent in a terrible Spanish speaking, situation, but it does work, right? So you can use it listened to the conversation and typed the responses for me, which is insane. But we do have somebody on staff who's able to assist. And I think I have 75 student workers. There are quite a few of them that also have Spanish as the major that we reach out to as well.
I never would have thought. See, I don't think either, Michelle, like you were saying, you feel like your mom, I don't think about instantly using AI either. So very impressed that you use that to help you formulate a response. And I need to keep that idea in my head. Anybody else? I don't know, Michelle, Jim, do you do anything with other languages?
We don't have a lot. Admissions always, we're in the same division as admissions. They always ensure they have at least 1 to 2 Spanish speakers. So they'll come in and translate for us if we need to. Just where we're located, we just don't have a lot. My answer would be different depending on where I worked.
Yeah.
And for me, yes, tons, because depending on the school that I'm working with for whatever contract, a lot of times it might be international. And so if it's international, it's same principle applies. I hire part-timers. I have international students who are attending different universities who assist. So but the Spanish speaking is a big one. And we do get a lot of parents that are in need of that. And not so much the students. Most of the students do understand that the instruction is going to be in English, if it is going to be in English. But just calming the parents down and making sure that they understand, we always try to have at least 1 or 2 fluent students that are working for me. So same thing goes into the part-timers and weekends. Always try to have at least somebody on there, minimum bilingual, who can help out in such a way, because when we're calling out, especially for the traditional clients that I work with, we do get it. And depending on where they're located, we get more. Some schools, I don't need it. Other schools, I need it half the time. So.
Yeah. And I, playing the role of Nadia again for a moment. And we do have a few employees that do speak Spanish or other languages, not something that we have fully marketed as a foreign language speaking, but when the occasional call does come in, we usually have somebody that's able to answer that. And we've explored it, again, depending on the type of school that's reached out to us, where they're located, who their population is, to see how we can accommodate that. But it hasn't been like 100% that we've offered, that we always would have somebody, but we've been fortunate that we have a large staff that probably does speak Spanish and has been able to help in and get call transferred if we needed to, or something like that. Let's see, it doesn't look, I think that was the only question so far. Give folks another few seconds if you have another question that you'd like to post, or if you'd like to unmute yourself and ask a question, you're welcome to do so. I think what I heard so far from the panelists, some of it I think we all know, but it's always good to hear it, and it's good to hear from other people in a similar industry, right? That you are doing it right, or maybe a good reminder of things to think about is, know your audience, have your communication be personable. And I love the idea of having it be vetted by a student, just to make sure that somebody else, a different frame of mind maybe, is looking at it. Look at all your different variety of channels that are available to you. be it the texting or the phone calls or the emails or banners or other ways at your school that you can promote information sharing so that maybe it mitigates some of those questions. And be proactive when thinking about your busy periods and is there a better way to structure the staff or where to have everybody available? And look at your resources. Are there other resources out there that would be able to help you during those peak times or during certain windows that I think will provide that extra resource of information? So I think all good kind of things that we talked about. Appreciate the panelists for joining us today. Very helpful having your insight and thoughts. Love hearing from others in the industry. For those of you that did join, we are FA Solutions. We do have over 40 years experience helping offices. We usually find very flexible, unique approaches. We're love to see how we can help anybody in any variety of the kind of educational life cycle. Feel free to reach out if you want more information about us or how we might be able to support your organization. There's our contact information if you need it as well. But I just want to say thank you again to Michelle, Jim, Joanne for joining us. And again, Nadi's apologies that she was unable to join us, but I still think you gave us some really good information and things to just remind us and think about. So thank you, everybody. No more questions. So you're off the hook. I'll give everybody back a little bit of time. Appreciate it so much. Hope you all have a great week as we move into this month of May. Have a good spring. Thanks.
All right, thank
Thanks,
you.
Bridget.
Bye-bye.
It's nice to meet everybody. I hope you have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.